first you have to learn Swiss,
Yeah.
because you know they speak a Swiss version of that's a joke. However, okay. So yeah, if you know, I used to love going to the casinos in Las Vegas because the art was just. I still can't get over. You could go and see a perfect copy of Michelangelo's David in Caesar's Palace, and I remember every time I stopped and looked at it, no one else was standing there looking at it. You know, you could just be there with it. Look at the same statue. Well, it's not the same. In the museum in Italy, and the place is always packed.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to get up and see it. It's almost as bad as Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, which actually just last night I was, you know, taking a tour of the Louvre, and yes, the person took a video, short segmented video of about 100 people all in the way, and up on the wall is this little image of the Mona Lisa, which I happen to have a copy of sitting right by my desk. So I'm like, you know, hey, there she is, you know. Okay, it's not the one that he actually touched
I was
and
gonna say, seeing
painted.
the actual piece is different.
But nonetheless, yeah, I go for the art. In any case, so we left that whole business and started talking about, well, legal arguments. Main thing about legal arguments, and I'm not sure if I got into this much, was precedent. You know, so what happens with any of our systems? England is even more difficult because they don't actually have a constitution. They have common law. They have all kinds of precedents, and they try to structure anything new based on precedent. We have a constitution, which, you know, so when, you know, somebody says something weird like, you know, we're going to do away with birthright citizenship. You know, if your child is born here in the U.S., that's automatically a U.S. citizen. We're going to do away with that. Well, but it says in the Constitution that that's the case. So to change that, and in the latest interview, by the way, I noticed that he's learned that, oh, well, that would require a constitutional amendment to fix that. So he now includes, oh yeah, well, Congress would have to do something about that. And I don't know how that would work, because, you know, if you're going to say, okay, just because you're born here doesn't make you a citizen, but that's how we become citizens, unless you've, you know.
I mean, that's how I became a citizen.
Yeah, me too, you know. No one even asked me, do you want to be a citizen? Sign here. You know. Actually, at that time, I think I just moved my feet. You know, I don't know that I really had much dexterity in my hand. Is my sense of humor hard to follow? Or when I make a dry joke like that, that's considered dry, right?
Don't take me as a barometer.
Okay. So precedent, you have to be coherent with respect to prior precedent. So we did talk about the correspondence theory of truth. You know, that's Aristotle for the most part, but there is coherence there too, right? And you know, mathematics is a perfect example of the coherent theory of truth. You know, if you have rules, you know, P&O's, axioms, or, you know, whatever structures your math, it's 11 o'clock. So I don't know if anybody has to go.
I'm just hitting my thing because I keep getting texts.
Oh. When I, you know, see a watch, I think it just tells you time. I don't
Right.
realize
I
that
don't
it.
have a watch. I used to
Yeah,
wear
see,
one.
Very few people wear.
I'm surrounded by time.
I used to wear a watch when I like go on runs.
I have like 7 or 8 watches
Oh wow.
at home, many of which I keep alive. You know, they have batteries and they keep time, but, you know, I don't bring them with me. You know, what the heck? I'm not sure I even need them where they are, you
Yeah,
know.
we don't even, it's just we don't wear them anymore. I wouldn't wear this if it wasn't basically that.
So, legal arguments. moral arguments, that was an even more fun topic for me, because that, of course, gets into the realm of neither true nor false. Because when we look at our pitiful system of true and false, according to Wittgenstein, we're just talking about things that aren't really interesting at all. I mean, it might make your car drive, which, if you want to get somewhere, that's kind of important. So I don't want to belittle statements that have no moral characteristic. But the idea that moral arguments are based on your beliefs, and David Hume gives us, the fait accompli retort to moral arguments by pointing out that they're based on the society that you grew up in. When everybody in your community believed this is the right thing to do and that's not, then you think, well, of course, that's the right thing to do. Kant famously thought, that's universal, and that was because he never got out of town. But when we realize that, this community believes just the opposite of what this community believes, you realize that, wow, morality is not universal. It's not a natural human understanding. It's dependent on culture, and culture changes from one place to another. We talked about Sam Harris arguing that, well, of course science can solve moral problems because everything's based on being happy. Well, that's utilitarian theory of morality that isn't universal. There's other moralities out there that think if you're having a good time, that's a sin. And they're serious about that. They won't allow orchestras. They won't allow music because people like it. It makes you feel good. Well, that's evil. You're not supposed to feel good. Let's go out and eat sand. That'll make you realize that life is not supposed to feel good. Hey, the camera has not been having any issues this whole time. What's the deal? The Chinese fixed it.
The Chinese fixed it.
The Chinese fixed it. It's a Chinese apparatus, DJI. This, if you look at the drones that they sell, this is sitting in the middle of the drone. The same thing. That's the camera with the. I like them. I'm not thinking that the Chinese. There's more people in China almost than India. India's slightly ahead now in population. So if we had a real democracy, we would be speaking Chinese. If that were the decision of the majority. Okay, everybody speak this language. By the way, when it gets into the issue of what language ought to be the language of the United States, anything ought to be part of it. We've got so many different languages. Why would you say Oxford English starting at 1942 and going to 1955? You're not allowed to use any vocabulary that was invented after that. What?
I think it's actually one of our few really great strengths that is abnormal elsewhere in the world.
Yeah. Spanish, there's male and female. Everything is male and female. And it's like, I'm sorry, but, growing up with everything being neuter, and I can call it an it, that would be a loss, not being able to think of something as neither masculine nor feminine. Now, I realize that doesn't mean that they're thinking that it's a male. It's just the way it is. But when we think about so much that's changing in our acceptance of other people, especially when people are gender ambiguous,
Gender fluid? I don't know.
gender fluid.
I suppose. Like.
Verbiage
they-
changes a lot, but not gender normative. There you go. Well, no, you're not allowed to say that anymore.
I
they,
understand
I
them,
can't remember.
that if you think of gender as a, oh, Judith Butler calls it performative.
Right.
So
Yes,
that there's
yeah.
like all these gender,
Well, anthropologically, right, all gender is the construct of culture. You know, like you are born with this sex, therefore this. You were born with that sex, therefore that, and then all the in-betweens. So like we have a very, very small gender in the Western world compared to some other cultures where they have like 4 or 5 genders. It's really a hard thing to wrap your brain around.
statistical arguments. Those are inductive, so they're guesses. I mean, you can actually have facts about, in the last 20 years, 2 of our years have been the warmest on record. Okay, so that's not a moral point of view, that's a fact, right? But then how do I predict, so next year, is going to be warmer? I can't really tell. We could have Krakatoa explode. Actually, we've had a swarm of earthquakes in the Aleutians over this weekend. Yeah, 6s. One of them, I think, was a 7.
I wasn't correct.
A lot of 5s. And that, almost all in the same place. And so
There's been a lot of volcanic activity.
what does that mean? Are we going to have a volcano erupt? And we're pretty far away from it, so it shouldn't impact us. But if it sends ash into the air, that will disrupt airline traffic, because nobody likes a plane in the ash.
Dutch.
Sorry, a plane in the ash?
What?
If there's an ash cloud,
Yeah, of course.
right,
No plane flies
the
through.
planes can't fly through it because it could
Oh.
destroy their engine.
Right.
So nobody likes a plane in the ash. Oh, let me ask this person why they're coming in.
Oh, you look to the left.
Are you looking? No.
No, I'm with the city, I'm looking for ceiling tile, stain ceiling tile.
Ah, well, that's a whole different thing.
Stain?
He's with facilities looking for stained ceiling tile.
I didn't see it.
And so it's nice that somebody has a job doing that. Yes. Well, we have a pretty ceiling. Okay, so statistics, we talked about that. There's rules that you could use to figure out quality statistics. The thing that always gets me, though, and I like to highlight, is that it's still a guess. There's no sure thing, except that there's no sure thing. Causality, when we talk about causality, Hume taught us too that causality is based on our memory. This happened, and this happened, and then that happened. And that seems to always happen that way. And so I expect to think of these things as causing that to happen. But what Hume pointed out was that the reason we think about things like that is because we are based on our memory of these previous events. And actually, if you use your imagination, even in the thing that seems simplest, you realize you could at least imagine something else happening. And so that puts into question the whole fact of causal connection. It's not logical, but it's certainly possible that there is such a causal connection. You know, the thing is, again, we're faced with the dilemma of human knowledge not being able to understand how we can trust something like that. And yet, clearly, science has developed so many absolutely amazing things that we do have a handle on it most of the time. And analyzing a long essay, we read a couple of them. I don't know how well our analyses